Have you ever felt like sometimes people seem distant or uninterested in conversing with you? Ever feel like you're talking, but no one's listening? Wondering why you're constantly overlooked? What if the reason is closer than you think? Welcome, Psyche Nomads. Today, we'll explore 10 subconscious behaviors that might make people ignore or avoid you. Number 1. Closed body language. Have you ever heard that quote that talks about how action can be louder than words? Researchers have found that when we close off with gestures like crossing our arms, it's like putting up a silent barrier. Avoiding eye contact? It's as if we're saying, "I'm not fully present with you." And turning our body away? It's like subtly whispering, "I'd rather be elsewhere." Now, why do people do this? For some, it's a protective shield, a way to guard themselves from potential emotional harm. For others, it might be a sign of discomfort or uncertainty in the situation. And sometimes, it's just a habit we've unknowingly picked up over the years. But here's the good news. Body language is something we can become aware of and change. Number 2. Constant interruptions. Have you ever been in the middle of sharing a story or expressing a thought, only to be abruptly interrupted? How did that make you feel? When we regularly cut someone off, it sends a clear message, even if unintentionally. Your words, your feelings, your thoughts, they don't matter as much as mine. This is a gesture that can be perceived as dismissive and can come off as disrespectful, even if that's not the intent. It's as if we're saying, "Hold that thought, because what I have to say is more important." From a psychological standpoint, constant interruptions aren't just about manners. They tap into our innate need for validation and acknowledgement. Our brains are wired to seek connection and understanding. When we're cut off, it disrupts this neural flow, creating a tiny jolt of stress. Over time, if we're always on the receiving end of these interruptions, our brain might start to perceive these interactions as threats, making us instinctively want to retreat from or avoid the person causing them, meaning the person interrupting us. So, it's not just about letting someone finish their sentence, it's about respecting the intricate thoughts and emotions playing out in their mind. By holding back that urge to jump in, you're not just being polite, you're fostering deeper connections, nurturing trust, and creating a safe space for genuine interactions with them. Now, why might someone develop this habit, you may ask? For some, it's sheer enthusiasm. They're so eager to share their thoughts that they jump in prematurely. For others, it might stem from anxiety or a need to control the conversation. And then there are those who might not even realize they're doing it. It's just a conversational rhythm they've fallen into. But here's the silver lining. Like any habit, it can be unlearned and reshaped. Number 3. Over-explaining. Have you caught yourself or someone you care about over-explaining lately? This can have various effects on interpersonal dynamics, for example, cognitive overload and loss of engagement. Our brains have a limited capacity for processing information at any given moment. When someone over-explains, it can flood the listener with too much information, leading to cognitive overload. This can make it difficult for the listener to retain or even understand the main point, causing them to tune out. Perceived insecurity. Over-explaining can be interpreted as a sign of insecurity or lack of confidence in one's ideas. When someone feels the need to justify every point with excessive detail, it can come across as if they're not sure of their own stance. This can make listeners doubt the credibility of what's being said. Emotional drain. Listening requires emotional energy, especially when trying to show empathy and understanding. When faced with constant over-explanation, it can become emotionally draining for the listener, leading them to withdraw or avoid future interactions. Unnecessary time consumption. In today's fast-paced world, time is a valuable commodity. Making conversation drag on can be frustrating for someone who values their time or has other commitments, resulting in wanting to avoid future interactions with that person. But why do some of us have this tendency of over-explaining? For some, it might stem from past experiences where they felt misunderstood or not heard, leading them to provide excessive details in the hope of being clear. For others, it could be a fear of being perceived as inadequate or wrong, prompting them to over-justify their actions. And then there's the desire to be thorough, which, while commendable, can sometimes tip into over-explanation. But fear not. Communication is an art, and like all arts, it can be refined. Number 4, passive listening. Have you ever felt like you're talking but the other person is just waiting for their turn to speak? In contrast to active listening, passive listening involves hearing words without necessarily focusing on them or understanding their meaning. While it might seem harmless, when someone's hearing you but not really listening, it can strain relationships. It gives off vibes that they're not truly valuing the conversation, leading to miscommunication and missing out on the real emotions behind words. This kind of surface-level listening can chip away at trust, make it seem like the listener's not fully invested, and prevent genuine connections. Over time, it can spark disagreements, create emotional distance, and shake one's self-worth. If it keeps up, people might just seek out more meaningful chats elsewhere. Passive listening often occurs due to distractions, lack of interest in the topic, or being preoccupied with their own thoughts. Remember, when someone truly listens, that's where the magic happens and connections deepen. Number 5, negative self-talk. Negative self-talk, when expressed often, can strain relationships. It can be emotionally draining for listeners, create awkward interactions, and bring down group morale. Continuously putting oneself down can make interactions awkward and make others uncomfortable. In fact, constant negativity, even if directed towards oneself, can be emotionally draining for listeners. This can be burdensome for others, especially if they feel like they have to constantly reassure or uplift the individual. While everyone has moments of self-doubt, consistent negative self-talk can make someone appear needy or constantly in search of validation. Especially for those who are working on their own positivity or mental well-being, being around constant negative self-talk can be challenging and counterproductive to their personal growth. Over time, people might avoid interactions to protect themselves. In that sense, when in a group setting, one person's negative self-talk can have an even worse impact, since it can bring down the overall mood for everyone there. It can shift a positive or neutral environment to a more somber or negative one. Negative self-talk often comes from internalized beliefs, formed due to negative past experiences, societal pressures, fear of failure, or critical feedback. Sometimes, it's our brain's way of trying to shield us from future letdowns, or ironically, from external criticism. At its core, this self-critical chatter is often just a reflection of deeper fears and learned patterns. Recognizing that is the first step to flipping the script. As we wrap up this first part, remember that understanding why people might ignore or avoid us can be a powerful tool for personal growth. We've covered 5 surprising reasons today, but the journey doesn't end here. Stay tuned for part 2. Have you recognized any of these subconscious behaviors in yourself or someone you know? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts or questions with us. If you're finding this content valuable, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss out on our deep dives into the mind. Thank you for watching. Until next time.